All right, so this is the Awakening Podcast with Jordan Case and Chris Hupple. This episode, we're going to be talking about the ketogenic diet. What is it? What is it about? And we'll go from there. So, starting with the ketogenic diet, a lot of people think that it's you basically just don't eat carbs and you automatically burn fat, but it's a lot more complicated than that. Chris, why don't you start? Why don't you go into it a little bit more, talking about how actually eating too much meat or too much protein can convert to glycogen.
Well, so ketogenic diet, like you said, low carbohydrate, very low carbohydrate diet. And so therefore you use all your glycogen to convert to glucose until you run out of it, and eventually going into ketosis. It's a broad explanation of it, very broad. As far as proteins kicking you out of ketosis, if you eat too much protein, there are amino acids that are glucogenic amino acids, meaning they do make glucose eventually. One of those being alanine. There's quite a few of those, and then there's some that make just ketones. There's only two, leucine and lysine, and then there's some that make ketones and make glucose, both. So if you eat too much protein, some of those amino acids turn into glucose, and that increases your blood glucose and kicks you out of ketosis.
So, say I'm new to this, and I've heard people talking about it, and I want to drop weight fast. But I also know that if you lose weight fast, then you're more prone to gaining that back fast. Whereas if you lose it gradually over time and, slow, then it's harder to get back on. Well, if I'm new to this and I'm trying to get into the keto diet, I've been hearing about it. How long does it take me to get into ketosis? And what are the factors that apply to that?
Depends on your lean body mass, how big you are. And it depends on there's a lot of factors that make it. The length of time, there's really no answer to that, but typically like 3 to 4 days on a very low.
Is that if I'm working out, or is that
if you're working out?
So if I'm not working out at all, then is that going to affect the keto?
Yeah, it will take you longer to get into ketosis. Yeah, absolutely.
I've heard
the whole goal is you want to use all your muscle glycogen that you can, and all your liver glycogen. So when you're working out, you're going to use glycogen as an energy source. So that's why you get into ketosis faster. If you don't, then you're just using your daily metabolism, whatever that is.
So that's why you said if you're bigger, if you have more muscle mass, you're bigger than someone that weighs 120 pounds, and there's a guy that weighs 400 pounds. Well, it's going to take me, say that 400 pound guy, longer to get into ketosis because he has to burn all of his glycogen storages, right? It
has to do with lean body mass. So somebody with 400 pound lean body mass would be massive, but
yeah.
But to your point, the more muscle, the more glycogen, the longer it takes to use all that glycogen. Yeah. Especially if you're sedentary. So, but everybody's calories to maintain their lean body mass per day, like your maintenance calories, like 120 pounds would be like 1,200 calories or 1,100 or whatever it is, and then if somebody's 200 pounds, they need 2,400 calories to maintain their lean body mass. That's the amount of energy they're burning to maintain that lean body mass. So that's pretty much what you have to work with as far as getting through the glycogen.
Okay. So what do you think about the actual diet itself? The percentage of a daily diet for fat, protein, and carbs. Obviously, you probably want to stay away from grains, stuff that grows from the ground. That's what I've read, right? So you don't want to eat fruits because that will spike your insulin, and why is that an issue? Why don't you want to spike your insulin when on keto?
Well, you're going to have... So insulin's purpose is when you have high blood sugar, insulin lowers your blood sugar by pushing all that glucose into your cells to be used as energy or turned into glycogen or whatever. Mm-hmm. That's insulin's purpose. So we actually there is people that get into ketosis faster by using injectable insulin because it pushes all that glucose in your blood into your cells to be used as energy. And since you're trying to get rid of glucose, that's a good way to do it. But it's also very dangerous, obviously. Mm-hmm. I would never recommend anybody do that. And also, the other part of that question, anything from the ground, I don't know. I don't think that's really necessarily true. I mean, unless you're talking just grains, I mean, then those are starchy carbohydrates, and those...
So no starchy carbohydrates at all, right?
No just starchy carbs.
Okay.
You know, asparagus is really good. You know, actually, when you first go into ketosis, bok choy is a really good one. You know, that limits estrogen levels. Sauerkraut's good because of your microbiomes in your gut when you're first going into ketosis. You know, there's just any fibrous carbohydrate, broccoli, cauliflower, lettuce, you know, high water content foods like cucumbers, celery. You know, you just don't want the starchy stuff that typically you wouldn't see.
So even, I mean, obviously almost everything has carbs. Like all kinds of vegetables. And so...
Some of the vegetables, though, like celery or cucumbers
negative,
or...
Right?
Yeah, they're negative calorie foods, so they do have carbohydrates, but by the time it's digested and everything, it probably doesn't really provide any energy at all. In fact, you probably use more energy to digest it than it provides. So
yeah, that's what I read. Celery is one of the foods that it actually, because you have to digest it, it actually pulls water, so it's negative
celery's
calories.
A good one because it's super high in fiber and it's super high in water. And when you're on a ketogenic diet, the two things you need is water and fiber, because since you're not eating, you know, a lot of fibrous carbs.
So even if I'm on the ketogenic diet and I'm working out, say 30 minutes a day, just, you know, whatever it is, it could be cardio, it could be lifting weights,
weight training, the training that uses cardio will use primarily body fat, but it also uses some glucose and it also uses some amino acids. So anything you do, it's never like just, oh, well, that only burns fat and this only burns carbs and this, you know, there's always a certain percentage of carbohydrates, you know, or glucose or glycogen or proteins or fats, fatty acids being used. So like a weight training is mostly glycogen. So you'd want to do weight training because you're trying to get rid of the glycogen.
So keto diet, mainly adhere to weightlifting.
Until you get into ketosis.
Okay.
Yep.
And if I eat, because I don't think a lot of people know this, we can overeat on vegetables. Like you can eat too many vegetables, and even though it's like a slower digesting, it's a different carb. It's not a starch carb. You can still knock yourself out of ketosis, can't you? Or no?
Yeah, it's possible, but I don't like it's highly unlikely. Like, it depends on what you're eating. Like, you know, because if you're not, one of the things about ketosis or any nutritional advice that you would give anybody is, if you're not specific, they kind of, well, you said vegetables, so I just took these carrots and cooked them and ate them. I thought they were vegetables, you know, and then those break down the fibers. Obviously, those carrots turn into a super high glycemic starchy carb. Yeah, you know, like kind of like a potato almost. And you know, so I mean, if you're gonna say specifically like lettuce, a head of lettuce, how many heads of lettuce would you have to eat to knock you out of ketosis? And if you were working out on top of that, you'd probably have to eat, I mean,
quite a bit,
dude. I mean, again, depending on your size, but me or you could probably eat 3 heads of lettuce, and that's like
yeah. Well, what's because a lot of people don't know. I mean, people are going home like I'm in keto. I can feel myself getting to ketosis, and they're eating stuff like carrots, and because they don't know. Mm-hmm. So, what are some foods that some people would think like, oh, I'm in keto, like carrots is one of them. What else would you say?
That would prevent you from going into ketosis that people eat and make sweeteners.
Sweeteners, so
Sweeteners
no
are a
sugar.
big one. Diet Coke, Diet Pepsi, Diet this, Diet that. Sweeteners tend to do that because of there's a, it's an aspartate bonded to something as a sweetener, and there's some other ones that are glycine bonded to something as a sweetener, but those are glucogenic amino acids, and sometimes those sweeteners elicit an insulin response. I don't know, sweeteners are kind of weird, but a lot of people will drink enough Diet Pepsi to where they're like no longer in ketosis because.
So stay away from sugar.
Stay away from sugar. Stay away from sweeteners. Stay away from, too high a protein. Like whey proteins are horrible. Whey proteins are rough. Whey proteins can help you get in there. Whey proteins are tricky too because they can help you get into ketosis, but they're also if you're in ketosis and
They can.
it's really just macronutrient percentage you kind of go into, but carrots are one of those. Baby carrots specifically. Any cooked carrots. Anything cooked. That has a starchy content to it. Fibrous carbs you just want to stick with. Like anything that has a high water content. So, like
lettuce. What about
celery? Cucumbers, asparagus,
spinach. What about spinach?
Brussels sprouts can kick. Are kind of high in carbs. You got to watch those. They're kind of a starchy, fibrous kind of combination. Bok choy is a great one. Reduces bad estrogens. Just the fibrous stuff that grows on the ground. The stuff that grows underground, kind of like the grains, like any potatoes, yams, you don't want those.
So why is how does dairy? Because you're not supposed to eat dairy on a ketogenic diet, right?
Dairy has lactose, which is a sugar, which turns into glucose eventually.
Okay.
Or lactic acid, depending on.
So, because a lot of people don't know that, man. They'll
Yeah, your brain, and it's funny too because when you stop eating carbohydrates, you're like, because a lot of people used to do a no carb diet and have a ton of protein and try to limit fat too.
And it would
so freaked out from fat because it used to be like fat was so bad you would die from fat, and then there's a misunderstanding on what a ketogenic diet was. This is like 10, 15, 20 years ago maybe. And then so people would do a low carbohydrate diet, which was all protein. So you'd see people eating chicken breasts and wondering why they would lose weight, because their calories were down and they were probably getting into ketosis, but their body composition wasn't favorable to a lean body mass, low body fat percentage look that everybody tries to get. And it probably wasn't healthy because all those extra proteins create ammonia and everything else.
Another thing that people don't think about when even in ketosis is when you're on a ketogenic diet, like you're running off ketones, not carbohydrates, and carbohydrate, carbon, hydrate, water. Your muscles, you have that fluffy look, and when you stop eating carbs and you deplete yourself of that, well, yeah, you're going to lose weight. But are you at that point? Yes, you maybe lost 10 pounds, but are you burning fat at that point? And I don't think people are like, yeah, I lost 7 pounds over 5 days, but that could be all water weight and depleting your muscles of glycogen instead of actually then burning fat, right?
You lose when weight comes off quickly in the beginning. It's a lot of it probably is water weight and electrolytes, but you could also be burning body fat. So, especially if you're exercising and you just dramatically cut your carbohydrates down, and to know for sure if you're cutting body fat is being in ketosis. Like that just shows that fats are being turned into ketones.
Like people can just go buy those tabs to
urinate on these sticks, and then it changes color.
You can get those on Amazon.
Or get them at CVS.
I didn't know they
sold. Grocery
really.
Store, probably.
Huh. Cool. Well, is there anything else you can think of? I think
so. With ketosis, there's so much information out about everything. It's almost I don't know. You could everybody. There's so much information out that really Lyle McDonald's a good one. He has cyclic ketogenic diet. He has a lot of stuff on ketosis. The old Atkins book. They revamped it to have healthy fats in it now, but that was always good. People always lost a lot of weight on that. Stayed in ketosis.